My name is Cheryl Blair. I'm a certified health and lifestyle coach. I help motivated people overcome symptoms like chronic fatigue, chronic pain, anxiety, irritability, emotional imbalance, pulling them out of being stuck in a stress response so they can show up energetically in life. For many years, I did not know why my body wanted to continue to yell at me or give me some havoc. There was so much tightness in my lower back. I was continually in a brain fog, super irritable, had some digestive issues, and the list goes on until I met Sarah. And she taught me how all those symptoms and more were attached to my nervous system. Once Sarah went through my health history and patterns of behavior inside my body, there was a whole different understanding on my part of why my body was doing what it was doing. I was walking around in a freeze. I was just very dissociated. And for a long period of time, years ago, I was in a flight when my children were young and I was working long hours. I was walking around like a robot. Can you guys relate to any of that? Now, Sarah has helped me overcome my health issues by educating me about stress and trauma. While coaching clients and reaching out to many of my friends, I have realized I'm not alone. My unresolved stress has taught me that it created illness and disease in my body. My mission is to help create awareness and educate others. I now want to introduce you to Sarah, whom I call my trauma specialist. She is my angel and my physiotherapist. So Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. That was such a generous and kind introduction. You did a lot of that work yourself. So thank you for putting the work in. And hi to everyone out there. Thank you so much for being here and for listening and your interest and your attention today. I hope that the next half hour of time is insightful and gives you a little bit of context that might help to generate some freedom. So I am a registered physiotherapist, and some of you may have worked with physiotherapists before. We work with the muscles, the joints, and the nerves to help rehabilitate from painful or debilitating conditions. We also have a whole host of, as physiotherapists, a host of skills looking at lifestyle and lifestyle conditions. And the longer I was in practice, the more I realized that bodies weren't responding to the kind of status quo, quote unquote, like 3 sets of 10, you move through the exercises and you improve. I would see bodies that were stuck in these really tense positions, and they would just return to those positions over and over and over again. And so I was constantly searching for a way to help kind of break those patterns without really understanding why those patterns were there in the first place. And then as I did my own on my own journey, learned about trauma and tension and stress, I understood that so much of how we respond to stressful situations and traumatic events can be held in our body. And after that knowledge, my entire practice changed, because I couldn't see the human body without the story of the person's life kind of written all over it. And so my business is Epic Physiotherapy. The name was chosen because I believe that each person is on their own individual epic. They're the hero of their own journey. And at certain points in that journey, they may need a guide to help them navigate the next mountain or the next valley, whichever it feels like at that moment, or even just to navigate a component of the climb. So I try to approach every person I work with from that baseline and that that framework, that philosophy. And I also believe that we all have the capacity for healthy movement in some way, shape, or form for life. So what that looks like for everyone is different, but coming to that place of acceptance in where you're at and then being able to help move forward is really what I love to do.
Thank you, Sarah. I can tell that you love to do what you do, and I'm grateful for you every day. So can you tell me what stress and what trauma is?
Yeah, there are many definitions that you could find. I like to go simple. So what I say stress is it's any circumstance or situation that challenges your normal coping mechanisms. So you can look at the stress on any object and you think, okay, this is what it can cope with. And if it starts to, take a piece of metal, if it starts to bend, then you're creating some stress on the system. I look at 3 different types of stress. You can have productive stress, which is the stress we all are aware of. You can go to meet a deadline. You can be trying to get out the door for a meeting. But that's, you can be working on a home renovation and you want to finish it. That's kind of productive stress. Then there's the tolerable stress, where it's stress that's a little bit longer term, but you know it's going to end and you can tolerate it for a time. Your mechanisms, your coping mechanisms can still handle the load. And then there's toxic stress, and toxic stress is really what I believe leads to trauma, which I define as any circumstance or situation that basically overwhelms the coping mechanisms. So if you take the object, it kind of breaks you a little bit. And that breaking can actually be very therapeutic in a lot of ways. So I don't want to leave you with the thought that trauma is something to be avoided, because in many situations that overwhelm can actually really help to deepen your self-awareness and your resilience. So we in many ways need trauma to grow, to learn, to adapt, to evolve, and to survive. But the problem comes when there is a disruption in the normal way we would respond to a stressful event or an overwhelming event.
Thank you for that, Sarah. So what can you tell me about the stress response then?
Well, the stress response is essentially how our nervous system responds to the perturbation of stress. So normally we're designed to exist at a baseline. It's our rest and digest, and I just will use my hand here to describe, okay, this is the rest and digest. And then your sympathetic nervous system is the one that has your fight or flight response. So we all know when you're challenged, you can go up that sympathetic curve, you get your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, you can get emotional or irritable or frustrated or panicked, anxiety. That is all a part of our sympathetic nervous system. And the top of that experience is our fight or flight mechanism. It's what is designed to help us run or fight a predator or a threat. In the past, it's our most primal brain. It's the brain that's the most developed for us is that primal brain. It's the one that we kind of go to first because it wants to keep us alive. And now if we can't run or fight the threat anymore, we end up in a state called freeze. And so freeze is the heightened component of that stress response. It's basically where all the systems shut down and we're flooded with endorphins. That would be to normally prepare to help mitigate the pain of eventual death, because that's what the body assumes is happening. If you can't flee or fight the predator anymore, you will most likely die. So the body gets flooded with endorphins and stress hormones, and we are designed to actually come out of a freeze by vibrating, shaking, or tremoring, or releasing some emotion if we find that we can that we end up in some safety. So say the predator or the threat leaves, we come basically down from that stress response, and when we do that, we develop more resilience to the next threat. We become stronger, our nervous systems become more adaptable. Now, I think actually we'll go to the next question, Cheryl, and I think that'll get,
Oh,
my next point will get answered there.
okay. So what is the impact of being stuck in a stress response? How did you come to understand the trauma, that trauma can be trapped in your body, Sarah?
So when I look at the stress response and I look at that question, I think all the things. The impact of being stuck in a stress response is it's so multifaceted. I can't help but think of the Lululemon tagline that's like, stress is related to 99% of all illness, because in so many ways it's true. Even if you didn't feel like there was stress underlying in the beginning, the impact of having an illness is stressful, which can then compound the illness. So we're looking at digestive, any of the body systems can be disrupted. So immune system, nervous system, they go hand in hand. So, anything from just like frequent colds, coughs, immune issues to some, more severe autoimmune disorders and chronic pain, persistent pain is what we're calling it now, is deeply related to the stress response. And irritability, that emotional dysregulation can be also a huge component of the stress response. So I came to understand how trauma was stuck in the body through my own experience of digestive complaints. And really for me, it was about an injury that wouldn't heal. I had Achilles tendonitis on both ankles. And it was to the point where I could barely get out of bed to work in the morning. I would kind of shuffle around for the first 10 minutes. And I had done all the protocols. I was a physiotherapist by this point, and I was just so embarrassed that I couldn't seem to, quote unquote, fix the problem. I've learned now that we don't always fix bodies. We just try to get the body into the environment where it can do the restorative work of healing itself. And so it was through that, the learning, the searching that I did. I took a certification in trauma, tension, and stress releasing exercises. And through that education, I was opened up my whole world to the fact that trauma is actually not something that that exists or lives outside of us. I remember the slide that I saw that described trauma as being something that overwhelmed coping mechanisms, and then the fact that there could be different types of trauma. Trauma wasn't just something that we reserved for really extreme abusive situations or catastrophes. It was actually something that can happen on a small, everyday basis. It's called vicarious trauma, where you can see someone else being traumatized and you actually internalize or experience it. There's compassion trauma, which is the trauma that often occurs with caregivers who are unable to resolve some of the stress that they feel when they're watching another human being suffer. And then there is the just the general trauma of feeling powerless in your workplace. So all of those kinds of things can be quite traumatic. So that's, I ended up finding ways to tap into my parasympathetic system, and my Achilles symptoms resolved themselves. And it was truly unbelievable. I had never experienced anything like it. So I love being able to offer that knowledge to people, that it is possible for the body to heal from something that is absolutely debilitating.
Holy cow. Well, thank you for that, Sarah. Yeah, chronic, right? It's chronic. So is there a way to fix this trauma or the stress response?
No. That's the long and short answer, is that we don't actually want to fix the stress response. What happens at times of trauma is that we can get fragmentation, which what we refer to as fragmentation. So it occurs between the sensations in your body, your emotions, and your mind and your thinking patterns. Now, often some of those mind and thinking patterns can actually be ones that were there prior to the traumatic event. And through the process of integrating after trauma, which is bringing those body sensations, emotions, and mind and thinking all back together online, you can learn a lot about yourself, and that actually really increases your resilience. So, Cheryl, I think you can speak to this at some point, maybe a little bit later, as to how you came to really understand yourself a little bit better through healing from the trauma. We also want to be able to regulate the stress response for appropriate fears moving forward. So you need your stress response. You need to be able to act really quickly in certain circumstances for certain reasons. And you don't want to have that go away. We also need the overwhelm, the shock experience sometimes, because that's our only way to navigate through the situation. If any of you have lost a really significant partner or person in your life, the shock that you go through in that initial phase of recognizing the loss is actually really normal and really helpful to just kind of get through the next couple of days, right? Until you start to bring your system back down and then you reintegrate. So it's all very necessary. It's not something that we want to fix. It's just that we want to be able to develop resilience and adaptability through the process. And we want to be able to strengthen our coping mechanisms so that we can maybe handle a little bit more load, or at least recognize how much load we can handle before we have had enough.
Wow. So, Sarah, tell me, what are some options for people here who might be stuck in trauma or in the stress response? What is your go-to intervention, and why do you use that?
Well, I was ready to say one. And I'll start with what I absolutely love, what I love to teach, and what I love to work with, and that is the tension releasing exercises. There are a series of exercises that are designed to initiate a therapeutic vibration or tremor in the body that's actually quite controlled and still from a part of your brain that's more primal. So it's the same way that your nervous system can kind of get wired. Even though you know you're safe, you might not feel safe. The tension releasing exercises help to release the tension generated in the muscular system, as well as helps to regulate hormones, helps to improve energy, helps to improve persistent pain situations. There's a whole lot of different ways to use the tension releasing exercises. And that therapeutic vibration or tremoring is done in a way that can be quite regulated. It's safe, it's controlled, and it really helps to bring back the body sensations, the emotions, and the mind. So it helps to integrate parts of yourself that have been cut off at a time of trauma. So that is one way. It also helps to deepen presence and mindfulness and awareness, and can help to facilitate the benefits of other practices that you might be taking on. I know for myself, I really struggled to get therapeutic benefits from a yoga practice and from some of like meditation. I really found I struggled with. Resting was very difficult for me. I basically had it that I couldn't rest, and resting is so important to our healing. And so the tension releasing exercises help to open up the door for other modalities, including guided visualization, meditation, journaling, yoga, that genre of practices can really help to reintegrate after trauma.
Thank you, Sarah. We've got a question here.
Yep.
I appreciate, like, Wes is on and Trudy, they've been commenting, but Caroline has asked, what is an example of TRE? Do you have an example?
Of like what it's like.
I'm guessing that's what she means. I'm thinking of the polar bear story.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. There's videos that you can find it. I'm updating my website, so right now they're not up, but I'm hoping that eventually I'll get a few videos. And an example of TRE in the animal world is where if you've ever had a bird hit your window, like the window of your house, and it's not dead, but it's just stunned, if you actually really like watch that bird and you just sit with it, eventually like you'll see it looks completely frozen, and then it will start gradually just breathing into its being. It like starts again, and then it starts a little bit more breath, a little bit more breath, and then you will see it shake, and it will do this really, really fine shake, and like literally shaking off the stress that's, all the cortisol and adrenaline that gets pumped through its veins whenever it hits the window and goes, oh my gosh, what's happening right now. It will shake all of that off until it has the capacity to fly again, and then it will fly off. So that is one way. Another way to think about it is if you have a dog, or if you've ever seen a dog and that dog is anxious and is doing it's shaking, that's its way of releasing the tension that's generated from the anxiety. So humans have that capacity as well. It's just that we have been kind of trained out of it, or our cultural practices don't include anything that allows us to shake that energy off, for lack of a better way to look at it. So TRE basically is like if you're lying, it involves lying on the floor in a constructive rest type position where you have access to that vibration mechanism within your body, and you let your body just therapeutically shake for a period of time as you become present to the sensations.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I hope that answered Caroline. I'd be happy to send you a video after if you're still curious, because I do have videos at my fingertips too. But I just have to say, I have had many symptoms, that, like I said, like fatigue and brain fog, chronic anxiety, sleep disorder, insomnia, OA in both my hips, osteoarthritis, digestive issues. That was keeping me all stuck in a stress response, not realizing how much trauma I had built up and did not know what to do with it. I did not understand the connection actually until I met Sarah. I took a 3-day training course. Module 1 is what it was called for TRE, and it opened up a lot for me. And personally, keeping up with my practice has helped me with all those symptoms, plus has brought clarity and understanding into my life. I've been able to stay focused now. My symptoms have subsided quite a bit. Sarah, so can I say I'm healed and good to start treatment?
I wish I could say yes. Every once in a while, I get into a place where I'm like, oh, I don't need that as much right now, or I'm not, I don't need to. We call it downregulate is the word that you use. I'm regulated. I don't need to downregulate. The reality is that we live in a very, very stressful and very activating culture. And so my recommendation is usually that people get to know themselves and their nervous systems and start to be able to use the resources that they need in order to keep themselves as regulated as they can, so that when something overwhelming does happen, they have more reserves to draw from, and they also have the capacity to come out of that overwhelm a little bit smoother and a little easier.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for explaining that. I guess I will just carry on and keep doing it. It's my new normal, actually. So is there any other questions? We're going to be closing out here, and I can see from the thread, I'm going to thank everybody, but I just want to know if there's any other questions. If there's not, you can still reach out to us, Sarah or myself. Sarah, how can people reach you?
Through my website, it's www.epic.physiotherapy.ca. There's a contact information button there, so people can see a little bit more of what I do there. I'm not very active on social media at the moment, so that's not the best way to reach me. I would say my regulation practices are less social media. So that's the best way to find me right now.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And yes, if anybody wants any information, they can get me on social media, and I can connect you with Sarah at any point in time. And you can get a hold of me too, not just on social media, but I am the founder of Above the Horizon Wellness. It's www.abovethehorizonwellness.com. And right now, I just want to thank everybody for joining us here today. It's been great. And especially you, Sarah. You are my angel, and I'm grateful for you every single day. I'd like to do a heart closeout, and this is what I do with most of my Facebook Lives when I can do it. And it's just a hug. And it's you put your left hand on your right shoulder and your right hand on your left rib. And you breathe in. I breathe in through my nose and I let it all out through my mouth. So this is for you guys. Breathe in through your nose. And then let it out all through your mouth. And I want to thank every single one of you for showing up here today. And I will be back, I'll promise. Take good care. Bye for now, everybody.